Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Invin. Today I am going to be bringing you guys a guide and walkthrough for the very first expedition in New World, which is Amrine Temple. There's a ton of quests you can get from this place, as well as a ton of good loot and a repeatable quest, which I'm going to go over all of these things to make sure you guys are getting the most XP from it, and obviously getting the most drops. I'm going to go over the chest locations, the respawn point locations, and obviously the mechanics of all the mobs and things in here, as well as the mini boss and the final boss. So obviously if you haven't done this yet and you are wanting to experience it for the first time, click away now, because this video is going to contain all of the spoilers you will need to complete this dungeon effectively and efficiently every time. But if you have done it a couple of times and you wanted to get your method key down, then this video will be able to help you out in order to do that. So first thing we're going to cover here is when you go into the dungeon, you need to set up your group in a particular way. Now if you're way out leveling this dungeon like most of us are now, myself I'm at level 41, so if I went and did it now it wouldn't matter too much. But when you are actually in the game, particularly when full release comes along and we get a full wipe, you're going to want to make sure that you have the right roles available. So you want one person that is a tank, that is somebody that's got a lot of constitution, so spec'd into health, and they're going to be mainly defending, usually with a sword and a shield, so that they can block a lot of the hits from the enemies, and they're going to basically be maintaining aggro, and aggro is what is known commonly as where the mobs will attack them instead of the DPS dealers and the healers and things like that. And so what you're going to make sure you're doing is attacking all of the mobs, getting them onto you and constantly hitting them or blocking their attacks. Things like gems really help here, so that they can increase aggro, as well as some of the sword and shield skills do increase aggro as well, which is really nice. And you're going to need those for the dungeon, especially later on dungeons, but even the first one when you are off level, like I say, anywhere from sort of level 22 to 30, you're going to want to make sure you've got these roles where possible. Then you're going to want 3 damage dealers, which are known in game as DPS or DDs, which is damage dealers. Those guys are going to be your brunt force. They're going to be going in, dealing the damage to the mobs and getting the HP bars down quickly. These guys should not have aggro much, but they will sometimes. If you are a damage dealer, you will know sometimes you do get aggro when you do a little bit too much damage, and the mobs will follow you around a bit. So you do need to make sure that if you are playing the damage dealer role, you have a lot of pots on you, some food on you. Obviously the healer will be able to help you out there, but make sure that you can maintain your own dodges and things. And finally, like I've mentioned there, you have the healer. The healer's super important, is the core of the group. He's going to be healing the main tank all of the time, as well as spreading out some heals to the DPS when they do get attacked as well, and themselves. A lot of the time in New World, healing generates a decent amount of threat, so you're going to need to make sure that you are pulling those mobs away from your healer where you can, and the healer's going to have to heal themselves a little bit too. So it's kind of, that's how the basics of each dungeon in New World will work. And now we're going to move on to Amrine Temple specifically. So obviously you will see from the gameplay that's on screen, you go through the dungeon, there's different mobs in here, mainly the zombies and ghost type mobs, and you go ahead and you kill these in each area. That'll allow you to progress on. Now there is little tasks that you need to do in each section, so I'm going to go over how you're going to go through these, as well as chest locations for you guys, so that you know exactly what you're doing once you get in. Now I haven't got footage of it right here in the gameplay, but when you do get into the temple, the first part you will do is kill a couple of mobs, and then you can go ahead and walk straight forward from where the entrance is, over a wooden beam, which is over a cliff jump, and you actually can shortcut a little bit of the dungeon out. So if you are wanting to do that, you've run it a couple of times, you've probably seen people do it. Some people jump across, but if you head over to the wooden beam, you can actually just walk all the way across, drop off the edge onto the next part there, and then heading down the stairs into the bit which you saw at the beginning of today's gameplay. Now in this section you've got the zombies, you've got the abominations, and you've got a few ghosts in there as well. There is a couple of things in this area that you need to do. So first of all, you clear the mobs. Usually people like to take the left mobs first, move down the steps, then take the ones on the platform. There is then a chest in the right corner next to the tent on this platform, which is an elite supply chest. You see that in the gameplay. And then people move down to the main door of the room, where there is a few more ghosts and zombies which you need to take out. Once you kill that initial group, you do actually get another spawn of a golden ghost, which is kind of like a mini boss type ghost. He's got a couple of effects on him. The golden status means that they are an elite mob, and it means that they've got status effects on, so sometimes this can be ignited, explosive, things like that. So just pay attention to what they are, because as you go through the game you will learn what certain ones do, but the most important one for the time being is going to be explosive. If they've got that perk on, make sure that you get out of the way once you've killed them, because they are not going to be fun to be around. So you've got a couple of seconds to dodge backwards, and make sure you use those seconds to get away. Now in this section there is also some silver ore which you can mine, and in dungeons it is always worth mining the ores, as you do get just as many drops as you would outside for things like gems and stuff, and I feel like there is maybe a little bit of a boosted drop chance to gems because I've got an awful lot of gems from mining ores in dungeons, so that could be a possibility too. You then go over to the door. You will need an Azov staff for this dungeon because you will then break the seal with your Azov staff. So you go ahead and press E or whichever your interact default button is. You'll interact with the door and that will then open it up. You then head straight through into one of the main rooms of the dungeon. You first of all should go left down to this platform and fight the ghosts and zombies which are down here. This is going to be the easiest method to do it because it is going to break the mobs up into different groups instead of trying to head on brute force all of the mobs in the room, which is not that fun. And if you take out these left ones first, it's very beneficial because you can go ahead and walk down the stairs where you see me going on the clip, down the cliffs into the waterfall area, and just underneath the waterfall there is another elite supply chest, which is really, really nice. You can go ahead and get a bit more loot from that one too. And on top of that there is some river crests which you can gather, as well as some silver ore. So again, if you are looking for those harvesting and mining skills, as well as just the drops from those resources too, you can go ahead and pick those ones up. And then you're going to walk back through the water. There is no swimming mechanic in this game, but you can walk through and jump up onto the ledges absolutely fine, no problem. You will not run out of breath unless you stay still underneath the water while you're looting. Go ahead, head back up the stairs, back up to near where you came through the first door into the room. Then once you are back into the main room, you're going to want to head underneath the bridge if you want to do this part first, or you can head upstairs, up the scaffold into the top platform. I personally like to do the top platform first, however in the gameplay we've got here we just headed under the bridge first. It's up to you which you want to do, but if you don't go for the top platform before you move on, you will have to clear those guys when you come back into the main room later, because you do a full circle here. So what you're going to want to do is kill the mobs up on the top platform or underneath the bridge where there is a big ogre type mob, and if you do manage to kill this guy, he will drop your first succulent bone for the Archimedes quest as well, if you've got that repeatable quest on, which is always good to get for 5,500 XP every time. So you definitely want to go to pick that up, and then that will give you one of your first bones. Then clear the mobs in that area and head through the archway towards the next section, which is this little cave zone. You'll see the mobs to the left which you want to take out first, and behind those is a purple soulstone which you can go ahead and mine if you've got the required mining level to do so. It's good again for resources. You then head up the ramp towards the next door, and on the left you will see an interactable stone which has got a glowing circle on. You need to translate this with your Azov staff to move on to the next part of the dungeon, but first, before you do that, there is a ton of mobs in the way. There is a boss zombie here, as well as a rotting pile of zombie nastiness, whatever it is there, bone mass type thing. And what you are going to want to do with that is go ahead and kill it very, very quickly before you deal with any of the other mobs in that area, because they will continuously spawn until you go ahead and kill it. So make sure you get rid of the bone mass as quickly as possible, and then fight the rest of the mobs, kill them off, and then translate the stone and head through the next door. The next door you'll be in another cave with two more ghost enemies. These again are golden ones, so this is going to have some sort of effect on it again, so just bear in mind which effect that has got. You can go ahead and fight these mobs. There is also another bone mass type area which is going to be like a zombie spawner, so go ahead and kill that one as quickly as you possibly can. If you kill the ghost first, that's fine, but you will have to continuously deal with zombies as well, so it's entirely up to you how you want to run that. So once you've gone ahead and killed those ones, you're going to want to move then through to the next room again, and the next room you want to take the mob on the right by himself first, the zombie, then take the ghost to the left as you follow the pathway around. Then you're going to want to go to the middle of the room. You're going to have to jump across the platform, or you can just walk across the broken bridge type area. Activate the circle in the middle of the room, or the orb in the middle of the room, and this will then give access to the next part of the mission. It opens the door to the second respawn point, and it does spawn more mobs behind you. So if you want to go ahead and take out the zombie pile in the front left corner of that, you can do, but bear in mind whoever does activate that orb, they're then going to have to turn around and fight those mobs, so you're going to want to go backwards and help your teammate kill all of those ones, and then progress through the room as you would with any others. Again, there is another bone mass in the other corner, so go ahead and take that out. Now once you have cleared that room out, you're going to want to head past the door that's just opened, and instead of going through it, go right the way down to the end of the corridor, and just behind the wall pillar there you will see another supply stockpile, which is another load of loot. So you're going to want to go ahead, grab that one, and then you can go ahead and go through the door to the next point, which is going to be a glowing Azov crystal, which is your second respawn point. You see where this is on the map now. Once you've gone ahead and grabbed that, you can go ahead and clear the mobs up top if you haven't done so already, like we didn't in the gameplay, and then you can go ahead and progress through to the next part, which is the puzzle part of this expedition. Now what you're going to want to do here is have one person stand on the stone circle in the middle of the 4 blue lights up top, one down in the bottom left and one down in the bottom right. Now what will happen is this will then spawn the bridge across from the island that you are currently stood on up top to the one across the water where you got the chest initially from, and this means that you can progress to the next part of the dungeon, but it does spawn a ton of mobs. It will spawn a mini boss ogre on one of the players down below, as well as a mini ghost boss boss mob on one of the players down below and a few mobs up top. So you're going to want to take care of the ones down below first. Make sure you all group up on those and clear them out as quickly as possible. Do bear in mind as well, this will drop your second succulent bone. Then you're going to want to progress across the bridge. Ideally, you all want to rush across together and fight the mobs at the other side so that you don't get knocked into the water, as that's going to be the most beneficial for you guys to do. And then you go ahead and head through the next door. Here on the left side, as you go through the next door, there's a foreman's toolbox. You want to loot that, or one person in the group needs to loot that, as it will give you a hallowed candle. Then you go into the room, clear the mobs. Usually we clear the ones on the first floor first, then head up the steps and clear all of those mobs. You can then go ahead and go round to the left hand side. There is a chest down there. You can clear those mobs and get the chest if you do want to do that in that order, or you can go ahead, interact with the shrine in the middle of the platform, and that will activate the hollowed candle that you just got. Put it into there, and then you will spawn the mini boss. Now, as you can see from the gameplay, the mini boss has got quite a lot of health. He is a golden elite mob as well, so he will have a couple of effects on, and generally the mechanics of this fight are fairly simple, but they are kind of annoying. So what happens is the ghost mob will attack you. It will fly around and get different aggros. Then eventually we'll go to the right aggro, hopefully the tank, where you can then stand away from his abilities. Now, you will all need to DPS him. Be sure to backstab mobs during this entire dungeon, as well as particularly in the boss fight, as backstabbing them does a lot more damage and a higher chance to crit, so you're definitely going to want to make use of that. He does spawn a purple circle on the floor, which will lock you in place and stun lock you, and then he spawns ghost mobs that will then come from the sides and cross over and deal a decent amount of damage, particularly at the lower levels. So you're going to want to make sure that you get out of that. As soon as you see it on the floor, you want to dodge back twice, because the area of effect of this stun lock is actually bigger than the circle indicated on the floor. So if you are a little bit outside of it because of lag and things like that, you are actually still going to get stunned. So you need to be a decent foot or two away from that in order to be able to not get stunned. So dodge back twice is always my advice. It works the best for me and seems to get me out of it sometimes, which is really helpful. If you are going to stay in it, try and stay in the middle and have your healer drop a healing aura on the middle of that event as well, and just continue to hit the boss. If you've got enough HP to tank that, then more power to you, and that is going to be very, very useful, because you can just keep putting DPS out that whole time. The other thing that he does as well is just randomly hit out and get a couple of damage off on people, so don't be shocked if you do get hit, but generally he does keep aggro to the tank for the most part, which is kind of useful. Once you've defeated him, like I said, there is the chest down to the left, which you can go ahead and grab if you haven't already got that. It's another elite supply cache, and the chest on the middle of the platform just near the note there is unlocked as well, which you can go ahead and grab as a result of defeating the boss here. So that's 2 lots of loot from this room, which is really, really nice. You're then going to want to push the right side of the room, where you will encounter another ogre, which if you haven't already got all 3 succulent bones, you can grab it off this guy, but you maybe probably got all 3 from the 2 that just spawned on the bridge before. Either way, you can finish the quest here if you haven't already got them. So that's the Archimedes quest done. You're going to go ahead and kill the zombies and the ogre here, and that will progress you through to the next part of the dungeon. You're going to get a little cave with a couple of ghosts in. Again, you're going to have a gold one, so pay attention to him. Go ahead and clear those guys out, and you will get to the third and final respawn point of the dungeon. Now, once these big stone doors do open, you are into the final boss fight arena, and this is where the mass boss is going to take place. Be aware that once the boss fight is initiated, these stone doors close, and you cannot come back in if you are not already in the room, or if you die, you get 1 chance to be revived, and then if you die a second time, you have to respawn at the shrine, and you are locked out of that boss fight. So try your best to stay alive, particularly if you have already gone down once, you're on your final life, because it's going to be very difficult if you lose players, particularly early on in the 20s levels, where you're doing a little bit less damage. You need all 5 players there to do as much damage as possible. I would always recommend going into the room, clearing the mobs on the left and right side first, then engaging the boss. Now, the boss throughout this fight will continuously spawn adds, which are the zombie mobs, and they are known as adds in MMO games, which just means additional damage dealers. Now, they just literally fly around for the whole time and get respawned every time they're dead. So ideally, you want your tank to be taking them, or you want one of your DPS to be kiting them around whilst dealing damage to the mobs, so that they're kind of out of the way. An ideal thing to be happening here is for your healer to do it if they've got enough HP to be able to get the adds following them round, dropping heals on the team and just running around healing, and that is it. While your damage dealers do the damage to the boss, obviously, and the tank takes the aggro from the boss. So the boss himself does do a few different moves here. He does the slam, which will actually stun you when it hits, and it's quite annoying because it does stun you in place, and he will then do a big swing afterwards, so you'll take quite a large proportion of health, and this at lower levels again can kill you instantly, so try and dodge backwards as soon as you see his animations for doing those. When he's about to hit, dodge backwards, and you should be good to get out of those. Equally, you can block them if you've got a decent block armor on, but if you're wearing light or medium armor, generally you're going to take a decent bit of damage anyway, so you kind of just want to make sure you're making use of that dodge feature. He also does a swing attack, which will just basically hit you and deal damage, and another slap attack, which will just do damage again and hit you for a decent amount of HP. Generally, he takes 2 or 3 hits to kill at lower levels, and then when you get to the late 20s, you're looking at more 4 or 5 hits to kill, depending on your constitution stat as well. But overall, he does do a decent amount of damage, so you're going to want to be dodging as many of those attacks as you possibly can. Now, like I said there, if you can get your tank to take aggro, just make sure you're getting as many backstab attacks as possible, as that will increase your DPS, and make sure you're switching between both of your weapons, because you're going to be able to use the cooldowns on one, then switch to another. The only exception for this is obviously the hatchet. If you are using Berserk, make sure you wait till the 15 seconds is up with Berserk before you swap over. Otherwise, you won't get your passive heal, you won't get your damage buff, and you won't get all of your other priorities like movement speed increase, which can be really useful. If you have aggro to the boss as well, you can use that to kite around a little bit. Now, if you are a DPS player and you gain boss aggro, the most important thing you can do is run around the room, just dodging backwards until the tank regains aggro, or if you've got enough timing skill with the game and the dodges and your ping's pretty decent, what you can actually do is attack him and then just dodge backwards every time he's going to hit, which keeps him in one area, which makes healing a ton easier, because the healer is going to drop those heal auras in one spot, and if they can stay in it and every other player can stay in it as well, it's going to make the job a lot easier. Just do this however you feel comfortable and get used to the mechanics of the boss fight, and once you do go ahead and complete it, you will be able to then complete your quest. So when you do eventually go ahead and kill this guy, you will get a victory on your screen, as you can see here, and then what you can do is go ahead and get the final chest of the dungeon, which is really nice, a decent bit of loot there. Sometimes he does drop a loot bag as well, so you want to check on the floor. I'm pretty sure it's every time, but you want to check on the floor for that as well, because he'll drop some extra loot for you. Go ahead and get the chest on the top floor as well, which is another supply stockpile, and then the heart of the orb is just over to the right hand side of the room. It's the little glowing thing that you can see as well, so you can go ahead and see I typed in chat here, quest item here to the guys, and it will be where I'm stood right now in the gameplay. You can go ahead and pick that up, and then finally you will exit through the blue orb at the top of the wooden stone shrine there where you saw the first chest was, and you can go ahead, exit the dungeon, and that is expedition done. You've completed your first expedition. Hopefully you enjoyed it and had fun, and you know some of the mechanics for next time, so you can help other people. You can run it back for loot, run it back for all of those resources. It's great for getting additional armor and weapons that you can salvage down for repair materials if you're running low, as well as selling them on the marketplace, because some of them are only bind on equip, some of them are bind on pickup, so just be aware of that. You might not be able to sell all of them, but some are just bind on equip, and they can be very decent pieces of armor and gear, so you can go ahead and use those yourself or sell them, which would be really nice. And obviously it's an expedition dungeon experience that you can then keep getting better and better at until you move on to the level 35, 45 and 55 level equivalent dungeons and expeditions, and keep going up through the ranks. So hopefully this video has helped you out with how to complete this dungeon the fastest and most efficient way, with a few tips on how to get through it properly. If this video has helped you and has been informative, please do leave a like on it down below, as that'd be much appreciated. And if you are new to the channel and you like New World content, you'd like to see more, make sure you do drop a subscribe down below with notification bells on, because I am posting tons and tons of content covering everything to do with New World, so make sure you don't miss out on that. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, take care and peace.